All right, thank you everyone for coming back. I'm going to introduce our speaker for tonight, Marilee Woodhouse, who's going to talk about rescuing raptors and protecting watersheds. So Marilee will give us a presentation about her work with raptors and addressing threats to local forests, in particular in the Battle Creek watershed where she resides. And due to the cumulative impacts of overlogging of industrial timberlands and other threats. And so Marilee is the director and founder of the Battle Creek Alliance in Manton, California, Tehama County, the northern end of AltaCal's range.
I'm on the Shasta County side, actually.
Oh, she's on the Shasta County side, just past that line.
Yeah, man, split in two for some unknown reason.
Okay, sure. Well, and she's been working to protect watersheds, forests, and wildlife for the Battle Creek watershed through research, data collection, field work, and plan commentary on logging and other detrimental plans since 2007. So let's give a warm welcome to Marilee Woodhouse.
So yes, I haven't done a presentation for a while, so I have to get back into it. But it's nice of you to all come out to see it, and I appreciate that. And so with Battle Creek Alliance, Battle Creek Watershed is north of here. It's in the mountain area, goes up to Mount Laughlin and goes down to Cottonwood. And it's also the site of a lengthy restoration project for Chinook and steelhead salmon. And it actually started, the restoration project started in 1999, and it was only supposed to take 10 years, and it's still not done. So, but it's working along, and there have been some things that have happened that are better than they used to be, so that's good. But so with Battle Creek Alliance, I lived in Mountain since the 80s. And all of a sudden in the 2000s, I saw a lot of log trucks going up and down my road all the time, because I'm not too far from the industrial timberland. And at first I was like, well, that's strange because that never used to happen. And then at that time, I was actually working at the Mountain store. And on the bulletin board appeared a notice that said they were going to clear cut what's called Digger Butte, which is just a couple of miles from my house. And at that time, I knew about a lot of ecology and wildlife and things like that, but I hadn't really studied it like as I have now. But at that time, I was like, oh, clear cutting? I thought that was illegal. But many people think that, but it is still not illegal, not even on federal land, but on private industrial timberland, it's not illegal at all. So that was quite a shock to me, and I've learned a lot since then. But and I wanted to mention before we start too that I don't mind if people ask questions about slides, like if you don't understand something or you don't know what something is. But if it's like a more of a long discussion kind of thing, I'd appreciate it if you wait till the end so we can make it through the slides. So, and then along with Battle Creek Alliance, eventually in 2013. And so then with Raptor Rescue, that became another aspect of my work in 2013. Thank you. In 2013, I started doing rescue work through a place in Anderson to the side of me. And then after a couple of years, I actually got my own permits to do it at my house. And I have the only eagle permit for many, many, many counties. I get eagles from Shasta, Tehama, Plumas, Lassen, Modoc, Siskiyou, Trinity, and once in a while, even Butte and Glenn counties too. So, and then I get hawks and owls and falcons as well. But yeah, I'm the only eagle permit until you get down to Sacramento, essentially. So yeah, it's a big deal. And I was actually didn't ask for an eagle permit because I didn't think my aviary would be big enough, but they ended up giving one to me anyway. So that was kind of cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we do. This is about our water quality data collection, which I've been doing since 2009 now. Collected almost 20,000 samples in that time. We test for turbidity in the water, for pH, for the water temperature, the soil temperature, and the air temperature at each of our 13 sites. And that's what that picture is it shows where our sites are on the tributaries of Battle Creek as well as Battle Creek itself. And then we also had a research paper published that was based on the data that we'd collected. It was published in 2018. And so it was quite a difficult thing to get published because the industrial logging company did things behind the scenes to try to stop it, but it did get published eventually, so that was exciting. And the water you see here in the corner, that's what water looks like when it's highly turbid. That's what the turbidity measurements are, is of the sediment in the water. And then last year we had a report done on the unregulated greenhouse gas emissions that have been happening in all the timber counties, not just mine, which is not regulated by the state. It's really a shock, and it's not something that media wants to cover. But when we had this report done, after thinking about it for many years, when we had it done last year, the analyst found that the logging in just Shasta and Siskiyou counties releases as many metric tons of greenhouse gases every year as 883,000 vehicles. And this is not being regulated at all. What they do, it's quite involved, but I'll try to tell it simply, is that what the regulators do is they assume that because trees are growing elsewhere, that it's going to make up for that, but it doesn't. I mean, that's the thing, is it sounds really good on paper, but in real life, it's not the way it works. And so the report is quite horrifying if anybody cared, but we have not had that happen so far. And then here's our raptor rescue. This is, does anybody know what this is? It was called into us as a spotted owl, which it actually looks like. I mean, spotted owls look very much like barred owls, but because its chest was wet, we couldn't tell, and we were like, oh, it's a spotted owl, because I had never gotten one before. But when it dried out, it turned out to be a barred owl. And it was found in Tehama County by a roadside, as many of the birds that we get are. They are usually hit by cars. It's true of all rehabbers, is the majority of birds they take care of have been hit by cars. It's like 60 or more %. And so, yeah, it's amazing, because this bird was actually bleeding from the ear and everything. I mean, it was hit badly, but it got better. It was just incredible. But anyway, and so this is an adult bald eagle here. This bald eagle was electrocuted. You can see on its feet that it has sort of blackened marks on its feet. And it turned out that what happens when they get electrocuted is they stand on the line, and then the power goes through their feet, and then it usually comes out one of their wings. And so in this case, it came out this bird's wing there, and it caused a lot of nerve damage. And so it was not, it had to be euthanized, because it was never going to be able to do anything much. So, and that's the hard part with raptor rescue, is there are a lot that there's nothing that can be done for. But this is a young eagle here. This is a first-year eagle who lost its nest. It and its nestmate, their nest, the tree limb that was holding it actually broke, and the whole nest fell to the ground, and amazingly, neither of them were hurt. And so I kept them overnight, and the people that owned the golf course where the nest was actually were able to rebuild the nest on a platform. Well, not the same nest, they used as much of it as they could, but they rebuilt it on a platform, and we put the eaglets back in the next day, and the parent came in, the mother came in just a short time and started feeding them again. And we didn't know that it was going to work for sure, because we had to move the nest to a different tree. It was close, but it did work. And so that was really exciting. And this is a young bald eagle. I put some different ages of bald eagles in here because a lot of people don't realize how different they are. They expect the white head and tail, which they get that when they're 5 years old. But until then, they're going through morphs every year of changing their feathers. And this is how they look when they're a first year. This eaglet is only 12 weeks old. And yeah, and I got it because it came out of the nest about 2 weeks too early, and it couldn't fly yet. And it was in an area where there's a lot of, mountain lions and foxes and things like that. And so brought it home. I had another one that I had just gotten a few days before from a different nest. Same thing happened, where it came out of the nest too young. And I kept them long enough for them to fly. And this was another thing where there's a lot of disagreement among rehabilitators that don't know if you can take one back if they've been gone from the nest very long and their family will accept them. But when I took him back, it took about a day, but he was accepted back to his family. So that was really great. And if you notice, there's a lot of white under their wings. And so that it's very confusing. I mean, people will see these guys and not have any idea who they are, although by the size you'd think. But I've had people from Fish and Wildlife who have called me and said that they have a baby eaglet. And when I get it, it's a red-tailed hawk. And I mean, it's an adult red-tailed hawk with red tail feathers. And so it's always like, yeah, red tail feathers, dude. But yeah, and they're just that's the funny thing too, is because most people never see bald eagles close up like I do, and so they don't have any idea of the size, and they'll say, "Oh, the red-tailed hawk, it's really big," and I'm like, "No, it's not like an eagle." And so these are some different folks that we've taken care of. Does anybody know who this is? Right. It's the juveniles are really hard. I mean, the juveniles look so different than they do as adults. And so this was the first time I got one of these. It's actually a nestling Swainson's hawk. And it came, yeah, and it came from up by Susanville where there are Swainsons. They tend not to be down by us too much, although there are some down towards here, like got one from Ridley recently. So that was kind of surprising. But anyway, but yeah, that's how they look when they're babies. And that one was actually, it feathered out when I got it. It was actually all down when I first got it. And it was released. It made it through and everything. And then probably this is a barn owl. And that's a red tail that I was putting on a creance line where you fly them to exercise them. It's like a long cord basically, and you just let them fly out and you go get them and bring them. And this is a bald eagle. This is a 4th year. So see, this is what I mean about the difference in color. See, it's still got dark on its head and it's got white on its chest and things like that. And that poor bird was electrocuted also. That's why her wings all messed up. And this is a great horned owl, and that's a little kestrel there. So we've gotten, I forgot to look up the numbers, but it's something like 20 different species, which is for raptors is quite a few. So yeah, it's very close. I've never gotten a spotted owl yet, but I've seen a California spotted owl on my land, so that was exciting, but I've never gotten one in rehab. But it's always a good thing when you haven't gotten them in rehab because, you know. And so this is just a little bit of eagle ID here too. So one of the main ways to tell the difference between golden and bald eagles is see how bald eagles, their feathers stop, so they almost have like capri pants on. And this is another one that I've even had CDFW people tell me that one is a golden that's a bald and vice versa. So, but yeah, that's one of the main things there. And then also the beak. So see, when they're young, their beak is still black, but so that makes it harder. But their beak is fully yellow and it's big. And this is a golden eagle, and see how they're feathered all the way down to the toes. So if you see them close enough, it's really easy to tell. But of course, if they're far away, I see birds close, so it's a whole different world. But from far away, it's another thing. But then if you look at them, so see, this is a golden, and see how it's got the frosting on the back of its head, and its beak stays kind of black, and it also is much smaller than bald eagles, because these are those 2 bald eagles. The one that was in the other picture is him, and then this is the one from the other nest. And like I say, they were only 10 weeks old then, and they were almost full grown. So they grow really fast. Yeah. Yeah, it was funny. I know somebody in rehab, when the first time she got a call for a bald eaglet, and she went to rescue it, she was expecting, like a little nestling kind of thing. And it was like this age, and she was like, so, okay. So now we're going back to things that we do. I thought I'd do some bird stuff, but and so this is our film, Clear Cut Nation. It's on YouTube. It's a documentary made several years ago that talks about a lot of the issues that I'm talking here, but kind of in more depth. And there are interviews with some professional botanists, fire ecologists, different people like that. So, and then this is our wildlife site, both Battle Creek Alliance and Defiance Canyon Raptor Rescue. And this tab here is for wildlife rescue. If you ever do find a bird, you can find my number and stuff on there too. And this is our YouTube channel. There's a lot of videos on there, both about animals and about forest things. So So this is a map to show where the Battle Creek watershed is, in case, I kind of explained it. But so this is Highway 44, Highway 36, and it kind of sits mostly between those. And that's Lassen Peak or Mount Lassen right there. And so this is the way the watershed looked. Here again is 44 and 36. This is the way the watershed looked in 1999, before they started logging a lot. And this is it by 2012. All these little, well, this is actually down in the Mill Creek watershed, and that's in Bear Creek, and then this is Battle Creek here. And all those are approximately 20-acre clear cuts, all those holes. Yeah, and that was just within 12 years essentially. And so then the next, well, towards the end of 2012, there was a fire, and it burned in all the logged land on top of it. And so all this big boot shape here, that's all the 27,000 acre fire. And this is something that media never really talks about this. They always talk about Cal Fire and the timber industry's talking points, and they always say, oh, we got to get in there and cut more because it'll keep the fire. And it's like, no, folks, that's not how it works. Every time you mow things down, those are the places that burn the most. And so this is it today. So the fire scar is still there, although, they replanted ponderosa plantations throughout the fire area. So all the diversity's gone, and there, the little ponderosas are growing, but there's no diversity out there, and it's really sad. And I don't have any way to put audio in here, but at times I go out there, and if you go in the older forested areas, there's bird song, there's bugs, there's all kinds of noise. You go in the ponderosa plantations, and it's dead silent. It's really scary. And this is just another one. This was the first plan that I heard about when I was working at the store. This was one of the cuts when they first did it. This is Digger Butte, and that's where there was a fire lookout at that time. And this was at the same place in 2021. That's where yeah. And the fire was in 2012. So, almost 10 years later, it still pretty much looks like that. It's a little better now, but not very much. And so what happens with the regulation? Cal Fire is in charge of approving logging plans. And what they do with all of it is they have all these ways. I'll talk about it with another map, but they split the watershed into what are called planning watersheds. So they cut the watershed down into all these little pieces. And then they just look at like the planning watershed, and they don't look at the whole thing together, which is actually illegal, because that's part of CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, is that you have to look at the cumulative impacts, but they never do. All those other pictures you saw where they've cut so much, they've never done the cumulative impacts of all that together, not once. And so this is what they do is, here's this whole picture of whatever ecology you're looking at. There's all these pieces fitting together to make the whole thing, but they just take and look at one tiny part of it and say, oh, it's all good, no problem. And so, yeah, the things that they repeat over and over again, no significant impacts. It's like, okay, if you say so, but that's not true. They say trees grow back, sure, in a decade or, a lot longer than a decade, more like a century usually. They say it's a renewable resource. Same thing in a century, if the weather is okay. These are all third rotation, what is called third rotation. So the first rotation was the original growth when settlement happened back in the 1800s. Then the second rotation was the part that they're cutting now. And the things they're planting now are the third rotation. And so every time those rotations happen, the soil gets weaker because it doesn't have the time to build up all the organic matter. So so it's a renewable resource in a way if you've got a couple hundred years, but we really don't have that. So, and they love to say, oh, strictest regulations in the country, it's so hard. And it's like, yeah, folks, look at the pictures. It's not the strictest regulations. And they also like to say California is a global leader on climate change policy. And that's what our report that I spoke about of some other slides ago is about, is that yeah, we're not even regulating those massive greenhouse gases. And so, yeah, it's like I already said, we're looking at, they look at the tiny part, we look at the big picture and say, hey, there's a problem here. And so with logging regulation for industrial timberland, this is not federal land. That's a whole different story. But for industrial timberland, like what is happening here, CAL FIRE is the lead agency. They're the ones in charge of approving the plans. The Board of Forestry is sort of over CAL FIRE, and it's part of the issue too. With CEQA, that's the main thing that covers these things. And as I said, not really happening. And then there's the forest practice rules, same thing. And a long time ago, there was a blue ribbon panel of experts put together for cumulative watershed impacts that was in the early 2000s. And one of the things that always stays with me in the massive important report they wrote is that they said there are exemptions from every rule. And that's the way it works in the real world. I mean, nobody talks about it in the newspapers or online or anything like that, but wherever there's a rule, there's an exemption for it. And this is a little bit older graph, but this is how many THPs, or what timber harvest plans are called. This shows how many acres have been cut up to 2020 from 1998. So this is Shasta County. You can see it's the most, and Siskiyou is the next. That was why we chose those two for the greenhouse gas report. But then Tehama is pretty high. Trinity's got quite a bit, and they've got more now. And this is not including fire. This is not including salvage logging after fire. This is only straight logging plants. And then Mendocino and Humboldt are very high too. And then, Plumas is high. You guys here in Butte County are not so high because there's not as much industrial timberland here. It's more above you. So, but it's significant. And, that's the thing, is it's all kind of significant. And so this is just like the typical page of a CAL FIRE decision, where they have these little check boxes for cumulative impacts all through the document, and they always check no significant unmitigated cumulative impacts were identified. And so, there have been over 10,000 logging plans covering 3.5 million acres in the timber counties. And that, like I said, it doesn't include post-fire salvage logging, which is a lot more if you add that in. And yeah, every single plan has been approved as saying no significant impacts. And, it's just, I don't know. I don't know how anybody can just say that and think it's real, Yeah, yeah, that's true. And so this is a page from our website. And if you go on this page, which is the aerial views page, I put together all the areas going all the way down, because where I am is kind of the start of the southern Sierra. I mean, the southern Cascades, and then it goes to the northern Sierra right below me. And so this is going up into Siskiyou County and the Cascades too. But so that's Mount Shasta. And I put these all, and they go like all the way down the page quite a ways. And it shows just the whole spine just being cut like that. And when they do say no significant impacts, what is it based on? Because they don't measure anything. They're the regulatory agency, and they work in concert with CDFW, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, with the Water Board, with California Geological Survey. And none of them take any measurements whatsoever, and yet they still say there are no impacts. So what's it based on? It's like nothing. And this is just kind of to show it's a little bit hard to see probably, but so this is a map that they put in an actual logging plan, and see how they just show the actual things they're going to cut, but they don't show any of the other things that surround it. And these lines here are those planning watersheds I was telling you about, where they cut it down into smaller areas and then don't look at the impacts outside of the one little line area. And this is another one that shows the planning watersheds. All these white lines, these white with the black dots, are the planning watersheds. And literally, when I first started doing this, it was right here. There were two plans that were filed within several days of each other. One was in this planning watershed, one was that on the other side of the road, and neither one of them even talked about that the other plans were going to be cut too. And so we've also been party to lawsuits against the logging plans sometimes. But what happens when we do that is because CAL FIRE is the deciding agency, that's the first person on the lawsuit that we have to sue. It's not the logging company. But the logging company is a party to the lawsuit too. So the Attorney General's office actually represents CAL FIRE, and they get what's called deference, which means that they're assumed to know everything and everybody else doesn't. It's not, you don't start on a level playing field where it's like, okay, so what does the evidence say? It's not about that. It's about agency knows it, you guys don't. So pretty much you never get over that deference standard. And so the Attorney General, I mean, all of us as taxpayers are paying for the Attorney General to, defend this and then defend the timber company at the same time. So this is what I mean. There's a lot of weird stuff. And yeah, we're paying for it. And in so many ways. I mean, in poor environment, just everything that is happening, loss of diversity, that all of us are paying for it. Mm-hmm. And so there are a lot of different parts, like sort of moving parts to ecology. And a lot of times I always run into this when I talk to agency people, because most of them are specialists in one field, like their water or their wildlife or, their fire. There's all these different specialties, but I kind of have to know them all because that's the way it works. And so these are the headings here are what all the different things that you need to think about when you're talking about these things, because they all fit together. They're not separate pieces. Like, if I talk to somebody about fish in the water area or at US Fish and Wildlife, if I talk about the fish, and then I say something, well, and they're cutting all this upstream, they're like, oh, not my area, sorry. And so that's another thing, is there's no overlap between understanding between the agencies, because they all just stay in that narrow little thing. And so water quality wise, this is a graph that shows how much the temperatures changed between the area that was logged, which is the red and orange lines, and the area that wasn't logged, which is the blue and green lines. And, and that was just in a couple of years where the water temperature really shot up at those places right after they were logged. And then with habitat loss and fragmentation, that's a huge issue too. The rate of extinction has been being reported for some time about how fast it's climbing, and it just keeps getting reported and nothing really changes. But I think this just came out this year, and the wildlife populations have fallen by 73% since 1970. It's huge, and it's kind of invisible because, like I notice things happening at my 20 acres because I've lived there since the 80s. And so I'll be like, wow, I haven't seen any robins this year, or there are a lot less wasps than there were, and things like that. And I mean, you can say things like with wasps, I'm not really that fond of them because but nonetheless, they're an important part of the ecosystem, and they're important as food to others. Some of the types of wasps are actually pollinators too. So I mean, you can't say, oh, I'm okay with this being gone. It's like they're all part of the whole, and they're going away. And so there are three things that everybody needs in life, and it doesn't matter if it's us or if it's a bug or whoever. We all need food, water, and livable habitat. And that's really the basics. I mean, we can talk about politics, we can talk about, sports, whatever, but those are the most important things. If we don't have those things, we're dead. And so is everybody else. And so this is kind of going back to birds again with habitat. As I said, most of the birds we see are hit by cars. And then there's electrocution, some are shot, some are poisoned by different kinds of chemicals and lead. Secondhand poisoning is a huge thing. So I would like to say, I don't know, you guys are probably smart enough not to do this, but anybody that's using any kind of poisons for rats or mice or anything like that, you can easily poison birds from that, raptors, because they'll see the rat or whatever dying, and they'll go and they'll eat it, and then they get secondhand poisoning from it. So your house cat, I mean, children, it's just really bad stuff. And even with ant spray, things like that, same thing, because like flickers, they eat ants. A lot of birds eat ants, and so you poison something, and it's getting into other folks too. There's no way it doesn't. And with all the logging, that's just so much habitat fragmentation. It's a huge, huge thing. And when the less habitat there is, the more they're going to be traveling around, like on roadsides looking for food. That's when they get hit. It's this constant chain of events that causes problems. And so this great horned owl here was hit by a car, and that's what happened to his eye. It did actually get better, which was amazing. It took a long time, but it did get better, and he was released. This was a younger bald eagle that was hit by a car. That bird died. And this was the one I had told you about before that got electrocuted, the fourth year bald eagle. And this is just to kind of contrast the difference. This is the way the forests look before they're cut. This is what they look like after they plant the monoculture plantations of mostly ponderosa pines. And so, the loss of habitat, the fragmentation, these are the main drivers of wildlife loss. I mean, that's a lot of the reason why we're seeing so much loss in species. And that is how it looks afterwards. And so same thing with the air temperatures. I mean, like I said, all this stuff works together. None of it is in a separate little room by itself. The graph here, it shows July 2019 and 2020 and 2021. And this was 2021. I haven't redone it. I know 2024 was even worse, but this year has not been quite so hot. It was still hot, but it wasn't as bad as the last year. And this is a trend line of since 1950 in Battle Creek watershed up to now, and you can see the trend is completely going up. And then fire risk. I mean, that's a huge thing these days. And certainly I know people here were burned out in different fires, and my land was burned in 2005. My house didn't burn, but my land did, mostly all of it, and mostly all my outbuildings did too. So I know how scary it is. But we're being lied to a lot about the fire danger. When they keep saying, oh, we got to cut more, it's like, folks, you already cut a lot and it didn't do any good. Cutting more is not the problem. And this has been proven in a lot of research, but it's not the research that gets reported on as much because it doesn't support the timber industry and CAL FIRE. Oh, I probably should go back to that one. And this picture is actually from Big Chico Creek. It's about a 20-year-old plantation from some time ago that they had gone in and limbed all the trees and they left it like that. That was in the campfire area. And that's not uncommon. And so there's so much with loss of grown forest because it's not just CO2 emissions, it's less canopy cover, it makes less humidity. That's all fire danger. And the more open areas attract more solar radiation. That makes it easier to burn too. And when a fire does happen, when there's all those open areas, fire blows through there. Fires create their own wind, and the wind just whips through there. Where in an older forest with canopy cover, it's cooler and it can kind of slow down the burn. Although these days we are seeing just more giant burns because it's so much hotter than it used to be. And then there's also a lot of new research on what's called vapor pressure deficit, which is a relatively new field, maybe 4 or 5 years old, which is part of the interruption of the water cycle, which causes less rain too, because the less vapor pressure is being released from the trees, the less rain clouds are forming and bringing the water back down. So, like I said, it's a lot. There's a lot of related things. And so these are just some more ponderosa pine plantations. And also another thing with the plantations is they bring in a lot of invasive weeds. You can see star thistle and bull thistle and different things in there that were not ever there until they cut it. And so this is the Butte Fire of 2008 and the Camp Fire of 2018. And this is actually a map that was put together by the John Muir Project, which shows it, you'd have to kind of study it for a while, but it shows how many logging plans there were. Those are the darker gray areas. And then all the pink with the stripes was salvage logged after the 2008 Butte fire. And then the Camp Fire came in 2018 and burned all that again. So that's what I mean when I'm saying, yeah, you can't cut it. Cutting it's not fixing it. And so deforestation worldwide is one of the leading causes of rising greenhouse gas emissions. And it's true here too in California, certainly in the timber counties. Because California is such a diverse state of land types, it's interesting because the timber counties are highly affected where it doesn't affect others. And of course, in the last year or so, we've also seen the Palisades fire be blamed on forest issues. And it's like, there's no forests there, you know. And so this is the conclusion, is that 11 miles is what is called the troposphere. And the troposphere is where all of life on Earth takes place. 11 miles is the most. I mean, it's from sea level, which is basically 0 miles, to 11 miles. And that's all of our lives, which is in that little bit of 11 miles. And, you know, to do the kinds of things we're doing to the world, it's just, I don't know, I don't really have words for how stupid it is. And, you know, from the smallest life, soil microbes are huge. It's something nobody ever talks about, and yet they're one of the main forms of life. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but out of something like 900,000 species, soil microbes are the majority of those. I mean, you know, we look at things like wonderful things like polar bears or eagles or all the different cool stuff, but those are a tiny fraction of life compared to soil microbes, and they're not considered at all in anything. And so, and the biggest thing, the blue whale, and there's not very many of them left at this point.
Gray whales are doing good though.
What was that?
Gray whales are doing good.
Yeah. And so, you know, I've read different places. Sometimes this saying is attributed to Albert Einstein, but sometimes it says, oh, no, it wasn't him, but whatever. It says insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And that's what we've been doing for a really long time. So this was in 1900 when they were logging, and you can see how much bigger the trees were compared to the people. And then that was by about the 1940s there up by Shingletown. And yeah, it used to be that they would put parts of one tree on the truck. One tree would take up a whole truck. Of course, that's not true anymore, but. And so, and this is a picture from the log land near me where you can see where the 2012 fire burned through out here, but then they came back in 2020 and did more clear cuts right next to it after they'd salvage logged it. Nothing stopped them. So, one thing that I really want to close with is this is a hard thing because as Americans, we're used to our lifestyles, but we are only about 4% of the population now. And we use 20% or more of all the resources like timber, water, energy. We use a lot for us, and nothing's going to change as long as that happens. You know, we can talk about, sure, the big companies are bad, you know, and they're doing it, but we're buying their stuff, you know, and so as long as we don't reduce our consumption, nothing's going to change. And it's like I say, it's a hard thing. So that's it. So if anybody has questions, thank you. Yes.
Currently, the city of Orville is entertaining a biomass plant where the old dioxin was located. I'm in the committee that's addressing all the pitfalls of that.
Great.
Many. One of the talking points that the companies from England, because they can't do it in their country anymore.
It's Drax, isn't it?
Their carrot is they're have a couple carrots. One, they're gonna put in solar panels first, and they're not using a local companies to do that. And so that's how they could get the public buy-in. But one of the few opportunities for questions, which they couldn't seem to answer real well, they want to sell this plant to the community because, two factors, they said from all the fires, we have all this now down timber. They would be burning that, and then orchards are taking out all trees and they cannot burn them fast enough. And so I talked to the person at the Air Quality Board, and there's a lot of unanswered questions. But then a big question that we have is, once they burn all the debris in the burned areas that we've had in all our fires and the egg waste, what are they going to do? Because they're a company, they're going to want to continue and make money. And they go, oh, then we'll just start cutting forests. And like,
Right.
it's crazy. You don't cut timber, to
Yeah.
burn, you cut it to make products. That, seems really unreasonable.
Yeah.
But I think be interesting if some people were educated as far as maybe your presentation, or just how bad it is, and the myth that they are perpetuating for what they want to do with this particular business they want.
Yeah, that's a huge bad project, and it goes all over up North State above me. I mean, it's huge. And one thing that doesn't get mentioned a lot too is biomass is actually dirtier than coal.
Yeah.
It actually puts out worse emissions than coal does. And then on top of it, when it's being shipped to European countries, that's even more GHGs from all the traveling of it on top of it. It's just everything about it is really bad.
And then they have truck, that's another wasteful thing. You have to go truck, travel to these areas that there's the debris in the forest, load it up, and then truck it into the biomass plant.
Right. Yeah, there's nothing good about it. Yeah. I didn't even think about Zoom. Do they have questions on Zoom?
I'm checking now.
Oh,
I'm seeing
okay.
someone's asking about the Snow Goose Festival speaker.
So yeah, who else had a question? Yes.
I was just curious if your water sampling time frame, I don't know if you said 2008 or 2009, you started.
9, yeah.
Any of that concern with the PG&E damage?
Somewhat, because they've been doing it for so long. But they've been doing the removals for so long that yes, it's been sort of concurrent, but my sites aren't really close to any of the dams. They're mostly upstream of the dams.
Okay. So
Yeah.
all your sites upstream of the Coleman Fish Hatchery.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, Coleman actually takes samples down by the hatchery themselves. But the main reason I started doing water quality work was because nobody was measuring it. The timber company kept saying, oh yeah, there's no problems. And it's like, well, nobody's measuring it, so how can you say that? And I talked to the water board, I talked to a lot of people and was like, yeah, how come you don't monitor this? And they're like, oh, we don't have the staff. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna figure out how to do it. Yes.
What happens to the ones that you can't return to the wild?
Mostly they're euthanized. That's really the main choice, because sometimes if they're not really bad off, most of the time they're so bad off that you don't want to keep them alive like that. It would be painful. And another issue is when they have fractures, oftentimes it will heal, but it'll heal and start getting arthritis in a very short time. Within months, they'll start getting bad arthritis in it. But yeah, with ones that are non-releasable, there is the option sometimes to place them as an education bird. But I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but for the thousands and thousands of birds that come into rehab every year, there isn't placement for all of them, and some birds just aren't even, their personalities aren't suited to it. I mean, even in the same species, because I'm so close with them, I see that they can have completely different personalities. Like red tails are known for being calm, but I've seen red tails that are really high strung, and same thing with bald eagles. They're considered really high strung. I've known ones that were kind of calm. It's very individualized in many ways what they can take, but that's why you don't usually see bald eagles in a captive situation, is because for the most part, they just don't do well unless they were gotten as tiny chicks and raised and imprinted. But other than that, they don't make good egg birds. That's why you just don't see them much. But with Edwards also, the reason I personally don't have any is they're a very expensive permit to have. You have to pay $1,000 a year per bird. And there is just not funding for rehab. I mean, I've never been paid for my time for rehab. I mean, I barely hang on buying food and vet bills. I get some vet treatment, for free, but there's no really good program. There is, a few years ago, they started having a box on the state income tax forms where you can check it to say you want your donation to go to rehab. So there is that, but it's not a huge fund. And, there's about 80 rehabbers in the state. There's only 80 rehabbers, and some of them have satellite operations. So there are actually more than the 80, but 80 permit holders. So, and even with that, there's just not, there's no federal funding for rehab. Most foundations, like I get foundation funding for my watershed work, but none of those foundations give any money for rehab. They just don't want to. And there's some argument, like CDFW, there's people in CDFW that they like to say the thing, well, just let nature take its course, which is great if it's nature, but it's usually, I mean, the birds I get are not nature taking its course. It's something that happened to them because of people. And when you see a bird hit on the side of the road, what happens with those birds, a lot of them don't have, even with bad fractures and stuff, they don't bleed a lot and they don't die fast from it. They just can't take care of themselves anymore. They can't feed themselves. So they starve to death really slowly. It takes them 2 or 3 weeks to starve to death. And so, the kindest thing you can do when they're in that bad a shape is to get them euthanized. It's harsh, but it's the way it is. So, yes?
Water quality control brought that up. The temperature issue was interesting that pre and post logging, there was a significant difference in temperature. I'm wondering if the logging is taking place close to the streams and reducing the shade along the streams, or is it just a cumulative heat impact of opening up spaces upstream, warming up all the little streams and the springs and what have you?
Yeah.
Causes that increase? 'Cause I couldn't tell the numbers, but it looked like it was a fairly significant increase in temperature.
Yeah, it's very significant. And it is a lot, the cumulative impact of all the acres being gone, but also there are forest practice rules, which those are sort of enforced. And the streams they're classed. There's class 1, which is fish bearing, and then there's 2, 3, 4. And so the most protections are on the class 1s. And there is a buffer zone that they aren't allowed to cut ostensibly, which is 75 feet. And so they do leave that, but when they take away everything past that, I mean, it's not a huge help. It's better than nothing because the class 2, 3, 4s don't get any protection. They're allowed to drive heavy equipment through them. And a lot of those are what are called ephemerals, where they only flow when it's raining really hard. And so, but they still, there's still habitat for a lot of creatures, even when they don't have water in them. So yeah, it's not protected.
And most of those ephemeral streams may not have water on the surface. They have water.
Right. Yeah, right.
Extremely important to water quality and temperature.
Yeah, and to just having moisture in the soil still, all these things, like I say, there is no separated thing. You can't say this over here can go and everything else will be fine. It's all together. You can't take it apart.
So there's a question from Don Garcia on Zoom. She's
Okay.
asking, are there any CDFW protections for any of the wildlife free logging?
It depends on if they're listed or not. If they're listed, then there's supposed to be protections, but honestly,
What is the survey?
it sort of means things like, well, like with a protected species of bird, like a bald eagle, they're the highest protection. It means that they're supposed to survey for the nest before they start cutting. And once they surveyed, and if they find an active nest and they see that it's, there's actually chicks in it and stuff like that, then they're supposed to stay, I think it's a half a mile away, it's not very far. And bald eagles are very sensitive to disturbance. And goshawks, we have goshawks up there too. And they're super sensitive to disturbance. And it's not, CDFW doesn't do much. I mean, I know that many of them have told me that they feel like nobody's going to listen to them. And I've seen done Public Record Act requests and gotten, you know, behind the scenes documents and stuff. And there's a lot of stuff. Like there was one of the regulators at Cal Fire literally told somebody how to get out of what CDFW said. He told one of his people to, you know, how to get by what they said about protecting something. And that's with plants as well as birds and animals and stuff. So yeah, you know, on paper sounds great. There are a lot of rules on paper. If they were enforced, it would be a whole nother world, but they're not, you know. So.
And for salvage logging, they throw all the rules out.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah, there's no comment period on salvage logging. There's no acre limit. Like, you know, the 20-acre areas of clear cutting, they have limits on logging, but on salvage logging, there's nothing. They just get an emergency exemption. That's that exemption. And there's nothing they'll do. So, and yeah, I don't have my glasses on. So.
Yeah, I think I saw another one perhaps. Well, thank you, Don, for that great question. Someone asked who was talking about the biomass plant that was. So, any other questions in the room? Lori?
Yeah, I'm curious, super.
You know people's names, that's handy.
Does, from Woodhouse, I think you said you would take a lot, you said you work with red shoulder hawks at all.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I love red shoulders. Well, I love everybody pretty much, but there are some, like once in a while I have a screech owl, a female screech owl, and you know, little guys, they're not very big. And I tell you, female screech owls, they want to kill you. You know, I hate to be gender specific, but the males are really sweet. They're just like, oh yeah, that's cool. And the females are like, gonna get you. So, but yeah, red shoulders they're actually kind of high strung too, but they're really cool. And I have one that I've had for some time that, she had an eye injury and I had to put eye medicine in her eye several times a day. And within 3 days, when I was reaching in to get her out of the container, she was jumping on my hand. And you get those ones. I mean, it's really strange. Some of them are like that. And then seeing them, the red shoulders, the females are super kicked back. And the males are just like, oh my God, not you, you know.
People think I see Dawn's raising her hand. Dawn, feel free to unmute yourself to contribute to discussion if you have something to add.
Hi there. I just wanted to commiserate with you because I used to work for the Forest Service and for 10 seasons working with owls and goshawks, and the protections we put around their nests that got cut into oftentimes due to just excuses to go in there and we have to take that tree or and it's really depressing. So it is hard to work in a system where you think you're helping out and you find out it's not really doing any good. And I appreciate what you're doing, sharing your information, and also, of course, the work you do with the birds. It sounds like your goals to me were to help educate us and make us aware, but also to reduce our consumption and be very mindful with what you purchase and what your lifestyle basically, and lifestyle changes. Is there anything else, I mean, that you could identify that could be helpful as far as changing the direction of the agencies that have all the power but no teeth, or at least don't seem to care too much?
Yeah, that would be huge right there. Yeah, I mean, and you can talk about Citizens United and things like
So
that.
someone in the audience, Hills on Zoom, said take the money out of politics.
Yeah, but
For sure.
really with the agency stuff, boy, I tell you, I've been hitting my head against that stone wall for a lot of years now. And I don't know what the answer is, honestly, because it's been like this forever. It's not just now. It's been like that through every single governor. It doesn't matter what party they are or anything. I mean, it's just the way it is.
What do you do to protect yourself when you're dealing with the animals?
Wear gloves. Yeah, I wear big welding gloves and no, I don't do the face stuff and everything. Honestly, when I was being trained, and I had some training down at UC Davis Raptor Center as well as, you know, just experience hands-on at where I used to work. But you're trained generally speaking, in rehab, you're trained to not talk to the animals. And I mean, I still am very quiet around them, but I do talk to them because I don't know why. And I've had a lot of domestic animals over the years as well, but for whatever reason, they seem to respond to my voice. I mean, it seems like it makes them calmer if I talk to them. And so I just do. I mean, I just keep it quiet and say things, but that's how I work with them. And honestly, I also believe from many years now, I've taken care of on my own permit about 400 birds now, and that includes 70 something eagles. And, I just really believe that they know what's going on. They have a whole level of communication that we don't have. And for what, I don't know if they read people or they can just tell that I'm trying to help them. And very rarely have a problem with them. Once in a while, somebody will try to foot me, grab me with their foot, and it hurts, but it doesn't kill me. So there's a lot of things like that. I mean, it's the same. I had horses forever until now. Unfortunately, they're all dead. But horses are big; they can hurt you. But you work with them. Same. I've had wolf hybrid dogs since the '80s. On different ones, of course, not all the same ones. But same thing. You just learn to work with them and not. Just figure it out and respect. Just the level of respect that I have for them. I think it just comes through somehow. So yeah, gloves. I definitely use gloves. Yes.
The waddling. And you said that when they're replanting, they're just using the ponderosa phone.
Mm-hmm.
What would it take to work with the logging companies to diversify what is replanted?
People when I first started out particularly, they were like, "Oh, you should go sit down with SPI, Sierra Pacific Industries, because that's who owns most of the timberland in all this area." I mean, there's some smaller ones too, but that's the main one. And people said that, and I did talk to them a few times, and then during legal things, I had to talk to them about things too. But honestly, they are just like, "We're going to do it our way, and that's it." I mean, I've never found any, and same with putting comments in. I've written extensive comments. I mean, I should have gotten my doctorate for the last one I wrote. But honestly, I've never seen in all the comments I've done, I can't remember how many plans I've commented on. It's probably something like 20 something or more. But I've never seen them change one thing from comments, not one.
You change what you make them change.
Yeah, and when you can't win in court, I mean, if we could win in court, that would be a huge difference, but it hasn't happened, so, yes?
This is just what I don't understand the question. On Interstate 5 especially, how do I see so many dead raptors, owls, hawks, etc.? Is it because there's prey items in the center and they're coming in slow and then the truck?
Yeah, essentially, there are things around the edges of the roads that, there's mice and stuff. And part of that's, I mean, that's something that you can actually do. Everybody individually can do is don't throw food out the window on the side of the road because then that attracts rodents and then that attracts the raptors and then things happen, So, yeah, so there is probably, you could say, like around the orchards, there's naturally occurring food that would be, rodents and stuff that would be there anyway. But certainly, with all the food that people just sort of toss out the window, apple core, anything where it's like, it's organic. And it's like, well, yeah, but it still attracts problems. So, yeah. And that was the other thing I was going to say too, is that the other thing that everybody can do individually is pay attention when you drive. I mean, I'm not saying that you don't already, but if you see birds on the side of the road, slow down because just giving them those few seconds can save their lives. Because particularly turkey vultures and eagles, they're often on the sides of the road, and they're big birds. It takes some effort to get away. They can't do it that fast. And I've seen driving behind other people, I've seen so many things be hit, not, mammals as well as birds. But, people don't even take their foot off the gas for a minute. And it's like, just give them a second. And because things happen, they panic or, with some of the birds particularly, they'll be like, I don't want to leave this food. I need this food. I don't want to leave it. So they wait till the last second. But yeah, if you just slow down for, give them a little bit of time and let them get out of the way.
So part two to that question is legally, if you saw an injured raptor side of the highway, that's surprisingly, I see them often west of UC Davis, and I'm hoping they stop raptors there.
I do, yeah.
So as a private citizen with no licensing whatsoever, and I have allowed to scoop up the red tail with big gloves on, put it in a glove box, and bring it to the city.
The glove box. Yeah, no, yeah, you are. As long as you don't keep them longer than 24 hours, that's the only time. And really, I've never seen that enforced, but you aren't supposed to keep them legally for more than 24 hours. And yeah, what you need to do is to pick them up, get them, to a rehabber as soon as possible. And that's not always easy to do either, honestly, because there just aren't that many, and it's just a whole thing. But nonetheless, you could save their life by doing that, because the longer they stay out there, the worse it is for them. Like if I get a bird who hasn't half starved to death or mostly starved to death, and I get it, it has a lot better chance of making it where I can get hydration and food into it than if it sits out there for a couple of weeks. And that's another thing that usually if you call any rehabbers, if they have a recording on their phone, they'll tell you, don't feed or give water to the bird, because sometimes they'll have internal injuries, and especially with food, they can't process it and it'll sit there and rot, and it makes it worse. So it's better to not try to feed them, but to get them to a rehabber as soon as you can.
Need any help for the water monitoring process of your rehab facility? Do you have people that?
I have a few people here and there nobody really wants to do water monitoring. It's kind of time consuming, and yeah, I've trained a few people and they never came back. So I mean, here in Chico, I don't know if you still have it, but the stream team, I think it was, yeah. Yeah, they really had a great program, but I don't have that in Mountains. But and Raptor Rescue, yeah, I have to train people. That's another hard one, because a lot of people think it'll be fun, and it's not fun. It's hard work, and it's painful. It's painful when you see them struggling, you can't help them. It's hard. And I love doing it. I find it really meaningful, but it's not fun. And so when people come into it thinking, yeah, I'm going to get to hold a bird on my arm all the time, it's like, it's not like that. So.
You're probably familiar with Holland Pine, and know that they actually do replanting. They just do kind of a managed harvest, is what I understand. And is that a viable option that FBI should be adopting?
It's Collins is better, but it's not really great either. I mean, if you look at their land, it's pretty overcut, even though they don't completely clear cut it usually. But yeah, it's the trouble is we just can't take that much. We've taken a lot, and can't just keep taking it like it's going to go on forever. It's like your bank account, you can't just count the deposits and not the withdrawals.
So how can people donate and support your awesome organization?
If you go on our website, the Battle Creek Alliance, you have to put the battlecreekalliance.org. That's because I had to do it because it was taken without the. If you do that on the Raptor Rescue page or the Wildlife Rescue tab that I showed you in the beginning, there is a place to donate that way, or you can send checks to my address. It's on the website as well. So yeah, and any donations are huge, and you can specify if you want them to go for forest work or for raptors or for both or whatever.
Was that web link?
It's the Battle Creek. It's towards the beginning of the slideshow.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, if you can find like one of the first few slides. That's the beginning. So further. Well, it was there.
I think I know what you're talking.
There it is. Wait, it's back one. That's yeah. It's forward. No, it's after the birds. It's
Right there.
Yeah, right there. So see where the Wildlife Rescue tab is.
So battlecreekalliance.org, it looks like.
Yeah, but the Battle Creek.
The Battle Creek Alliance.
Yeah. Or if you can remember how to spell my name, because my name is unusual, you can actually look me up, and I'm the only Marilee Woodhouse on the net in the entire world.
We're grateful you're in this world, Marilee. Thanks so much.
Thank you.